Hello, 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 and welcome to our webinar. I'm really excited to have you guys here. If you haven't been on a webinar like this before, there isn't any video involved, so you can see me. I can't see you. But if you want to say hi in the chat, that would be lovely. If you can access that, it would be amazing. And as we go through this webinar, you are more than welcome to throw questions in the chat. If I feel like it's poignant, I will stop and speak to that. It's nice to sort of hear how things are going and flowing. And or if you've asked a question and I haven't touched it yet, it might be because I know that I'm going to get to that, or I'll save it for the end. So I've got some beautiful slides for you today. Hello, hello, beautiful. And I won't take very long, probably give it just maybe 1 more minute and then I'm going to crack in. But I'm really glad you're here, and I'm grateful that you've chosen to take this little journey with me. And I hope that I can offer something for you, something to spark your heart, something to guide you a little more. I really often wish that we were in the room together so I could find out a little bit more about what brought you here and how I can help. However, that hopefully what I've got to share with you today is of service to you, and that's why I do my work, is to what it can be of service. So there's lots of things sort of going on around the sides of the webinar in order for me to keep the presentation and things going. So if my eyes are darting, excuse me as I do that. But I'm gonna crack in because I really value your time, and I want to share this beautiful presentation with you. But the presentation is also, it's a visual for you, but it's a guide for me to really stay on track with what I want to share with you. We've got 45 minutes together. I'll stick around if there are questions and things like that at the end. I'm happy to chat, but fire them away at any point and I will keep an eye on that too. That'll be another reason why you see me wee eyes darting, is keeping an eye on that. So let's bring up this presentation. So you are here for this webinar around worthy, around feeling worthy, around what self-worth is. And this is just been such a big focus for me for my own journey, as well as what I can really deeply see is needed for so many. We no longer live in a world where we need to please and appease. We no longer live in a space where we need to withdraw and hide ourselves. It is not of service to anyone anymore. And I'm really just such a deep advocate of that. And I respect that there are and have been previous generations that maybe got accustomed to withdrawing, staying small, staying quiet, putting themselves at last and not being a priority and not being safe and being authentic. And I think that these are all factors in and around self-worth. So I'm really glad that I get to share a lot of these concepts that I've been working on with one-on-one with clients for many years. And then I started to think, like, we need to get more of this information out there and more of this perspective on owning our worth and really living in a place within ourselves that isn't necessarily always confident, but is perhaps courageous, is accepting, is kind. And that is what I want to ask you to bring on this webinar today, because often when I start to share some of these perceptions and these concepts for you, what happens is that people automatically go to what they haven't been doing yet, measuring themselves against what I'm sharing, start finding judgment about why they hadn't made these changes yet, start judging their behavior. That is what keeps us from feeling worthy. So instead of finding this place of like, okay, this is fuel for change, this is nourishment for transformation, this is inspiration for enlightenment. There's many ways for me to say, like, when you start to observe self, even the parts of you that you don't necessarily love, with acceptance and non-judgment, things can start to change. It's actually in that measuring of self, because we're all pretty wired for self-criticism, that we can really start to bring change in. So I like to talk about this as fuel for change. So what I want you to bring as I share these concepts is loving kindness for self. Can you be kind to yourself as things come up? Can we embrace non-judgment? And remember that as you hear this, as these things, I'm not going to say trigger, but like spark or maybe relate, then can you remember that this is nourishment for transformation and inspiration for enlightenment? So what is self-worth? Truly, like, what is self-worth? How do we determine that? So self-worth versus also, because a lot of people think that self-worth and self-esteem, same thing. Not so much. Self-worth is your inherent sense of value, the deep, unshakable knowing that you are enough just by existing. It doesn't change with success, failure, appearance, or approval. It's soul level and it's rooted, unconditional. So, and that's what really lights me up, is understanding that your worth has been with you your whole life. Self-esteem, however, is how you evaluate self, how much confidence you have in your abilities, your appearance, your achievements, and how you perceive yourself. It's often shaped by external factors, and it can rise and fall. And a simple metaphor for this is like, if you think of self-worth as the roots of the tree, so steady, underground, essential, and self-esteem is the leaves and the branches. So it's growing, it's shifting, it's responding to the weather. Hopefully that helps. And I think that it's important to really understand the difference, because when we build only self-esteem, we're vulnerable to burnout, comparison, and perfectionism. And what we get good at is what we become. So what we practice, even if that practice is comparison and perfectionism, that is what we become. It becomes our standard operating system. When we remember our self-worth, however, we return to our truth. You don't need to earn your worth. You are it already, and you always have been. Always have been. I love this. And this is something that's really important to remember. This is not something that you are delivered to you. It is something that you decide. And what I mean by that is that we often put our self-worth out there. And so that's the difference between self-worth and self-esteem, right? So we think that our self-worth is our self-esteem, which is the measuring and the perfectionism, the comparison. However, our self-worth is what we decide. Nobody else can give that to us, but we are often, without awareness, and this is where we have the loving kindness, without awareness, you are becoming aware by being here. Without awareness, we are measuring ourselves against all of these things and thinking that that is what makes us worthy. So what I'd like to ask you here, I love this quote. Now, I had this quote. I'm going to ask you, we're going to do a little practice, but I want to share this. I had this quote in my last webinar, but I just love it. I just love it. So if you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint, and that voice will be silenced. Now, what I love about that is it's a reminder, excuse me, that not everything we think is true. And that our voice within us, which I do think is directly correlated with what we believe in within ourselves and what then we feel is, and what makes us worthy, our voice isn't always true. Our voice is occurring because of our external environments and the things that are maybe changing, not constant. Maybe there's fear, maybe there's doubt, but we allow that voice to become true, and that really deeply affects our self-worth. deeply affects. So I'm going to invite you here to take a breath and close your eyes just for a moment. We're not going to be here for very long. So just closing your eyes, just becoming aware of where you are. And we'll invite you to think of a time where you felt really proud of yourself. Maybe after achieving something or receiving praise. Just allowing that to come onto the screen of your mind for a moment. Now that is okay. And that is self-esteem. Now, clearing the screen of your mind. Now think of a time where you were simply present, doing nothing to impress, fix, or prove. Maybe sitting in the sun, perhaps laughing with someone you love, or just being still with yourself. And in that moment, can you feel the quiet knowing underneath it all that you matter without doing anything? I often feel that in nature, and that's why nature is so, so powerful. And a question that I pose to you, and if you can, I'd love for you to pop an answer in the chat, and if you're watching the recording, you can pop it in the comments. It'd be really cool to see and hear. What would change if you trusted that worthiness was always there? Before the doing, before the proving. What would change if you trusted that this worthiness was always there? Before the doing and before the proving. So if you feel like popping something in the chat, I'm not going to read it out loud. It's just those that are here. But when we voice things, and having a voice is so freaking important, no matter what it is, because I want to speak to that. I'm going to go off a few tangents if I'm not careful. But because of a lack of self-worth, we hold back from sharing in a chat or from sharing our voice because we're already worried about what people will think about what we say. But it doesn't matter what people think about what we say. What matters is that we say it because it's your voice and it's your expression. So I'm going to keep going, but if you want to throw something in the chat, I would love that. So worthy comes from within, and it is birthed in how we speak and treat ourselves. So a really big piece of changing and enhancing and embracing and really loving on yourself is hearing how you support yourself within your words. And a beautiful way to do that is to start journaling and to start becoming aware of the thoughts we think and what we believe. And then just having a look again with loving kindness without judgment as to whether that is of service to you, of whether that is kind and supportive, and is it going to open and curious, or is it closed and defeating? Is it actually giving you reasons why not? Which isn't going to lift us up, right? So I love Oprah Winfrey. You alone are enough. You have nothing to prove to anybody. So true. You have nothing to prove. You were already worthy. It's the thing is that through our life, occurrences happen that have us decide things. And then when we decide things, or we believe what we hear in the fear and a doubt, when we believe it, it becomes our current truth. Now I say current truth because it can change. And that's the really powerful thing, right? And that's where radical acceptance comes in. That's where making peace with where you are, understanding that acceptance is the doorway to change. So that's kind of like what I was referring to before, right? When we see ourselves behaving or thinking or not supporting ourselves in a certain way, we, instead of thinking, well, that's beautiful information, now I can make that change, aka acceptance. I see that. That's a part of who I am. That piece will help us grow and move forward. It's the judgment that will keep bringing us down and make it and take us further and further away from that place That is our birthright, because self-worth is not earned. It's remembered. And self-worth is something that becomes hidden behind patterns of perfectionism, overgiving, or people-pleasing. And that, again, becomes a practice that we don't even know we're doing. It becomes habitual. And that ain't fun. That ain't fun. So what are the ingredients for self-worth? Just spoke about that. Acceptance. And I like to think about it of radical acceptance. Radical acceptance is loving all the parts of you, because we are all parts. We are not perfect. We are not all loving kindness. We are and have little pieces of darkness and little triggers or judgments or jealousies or whatever it is. We have these pieces within us. But when we can accept that, well, honestly, that's when most of it will change. A big part of your worth is choice. Remembering that quote I was saying before about it's not something that is given to us, it's something that we decide. So if you want to really change how you feel within you, your worth, and that you know within yourself that you are worthy of whatever it is you want and the change you want to make, that's choice. But then it takes courage, right? It takes bravery. And most of all, it takes practice. And that's where I want to keep coming back to. Like, we get good at what we practice. So when we practice what we're wired for, which is self-criticism, that's what we keep hearing. So that's what we keep believing. And it's all about energy, right? So when we're in a beautiful, loving room, we feel that vibration, right? And we want more of that. We want to, or we feel we meet someone and we're like, wow, that person was so loving and kind. We want more of that. We need to do that for us. So understanding that we are wired for self-criticism, however, we can change with choice and courage for that real inherent worthy. So self-worth actually starts when we stop fixing what we believe is broken. So we stop measuring, comparing, judging, and start listening to self, when we get to know ourselves better. And we do that through awareness, right? We do that through seeing ourselves clearly, cultivating self-awareness through things like reflection, contemplation with a friend, a coach, here, journaling, or embodied practices, movement. And confidence grows in the light of compassion, not critique. If you guys haven't heard of Brené Brown, I highly recommend Brené Brown. She wrote this incredible, she's actually amazing. Like, so Call to Courage on Netflix, The Power of Vulnerability on TED Talk. I think she's got a book about that too. Her books are actually gone out of my head. There's heaps of them. That's why. Atlas of Love. She's like, so much work, and she's so incredible. But I love this quote: owning your story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we'll ever do. So the bravery is owning ourselves, owning and having that radical acceptance. Having radical acceptance and like really owning your shit and being like, yeah, that's a part of who I am. That is so freaking brave. But that is also what is required for us to really, truly love on ourselves and find and feel that worth. So I highly recommend her. That Call to Courage on Netflix is just amazing. So how do we get there? It is a work in progress. Trust in yourself. And I think the key here, and I really, like, I was writing about this earlier, but like, we get so caught up in what we're doing, aka the job, the success, the da-da-da-da, as, again, being our worth. However, it's not that. It's in our being. It's in our being. So building our inner confidence without needing external validation. How can we find that internal validation? And one of the ways to do that is actually start to notice the things, notice your small wins, notice the moves you make, or the no's you say, the boundaries you place, the things you start to learn about yourself that you didn't notice before. Celebrate your awarenesses. That's a small win. Again, instead of like, so you say maybe you become aware of like, whoa, I really didn't act the way I wanted to there. And normally self-criticism, we go into like, should have done this, could have done that, I'm a bad person, that makes me not worth it. And we literally plummet in our worth instead of, okay, well, I'm grateful that I'm aware of that now. Because before you were aware, you were just doing that unconsciously. Now you're conscious. So the key there is to have loving kindness in your new level of consciousness, your new awareness. So practices that root confidence in your being, like who you are, not your doing. Reclaiming your voice, your values, and your vision. So understanding who you are, what's important to you. They're all a really big piece of becoming worthy, because you're getting to know who this is. Who is this? It's not what anyone else wants you to be. So it begins, that's what I mean by it's when we stop fixing, we stop measuring, we stop comparing, we stop judging, and we start listening. And the best way to do that is I think is journaling, or if and I know that journaling isn't everyone's cup of tea, but it can be really helpful just for this piece when you're starting to build awareness. And then once you have that awareness and you start to have better conversations with yourself, maybe you won't need journaling anymore. But that is something that I really highly recommend. It is in your being, not your doing. And, you know, I mean, even beautiful Maya Angelou, she was like, your crown has been brought and paid for. Put it on your head and wear it. Maya Angelou is just like such an incredible human. And she speaks to a lot of this inner wisdom, the self-knowing, the self-worth. And I really, like, I highly recommend her too. She is amazing. So I think I want to make sure that I'm getting everything here. I think that a big piece is noticing what's already here. So there's a work in progress, and trusting in yourself. It's in your being, not your doing. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. I'm going to answer that question before I go to the next piece. So I hear you. I think that for starters, and I don't know if this is you or not, but the question was, have you got anything else apart from journaling? Well, definitely, like if you've got conscious convo with someone who is safe, someone who isn't going to make it personal about them, or can literally just sit and be in awareness with you and like really deeply listen, that can be helpful. You can voice note, you can literally just speak out loud into, and then maybe you'll hear it back, but even just speaking it out loud and recording it, that can be helpful. But what I will say is that some people are apprehensive about journaling because they think they just need to figure out what to write. So start with specific questions. Start with and really get into, and you might follow the same questions. If you need some, I actually might come up with one by the end of here. But I actually find that a lot of people who avoid, some people who avoid journaling, it's because they don't know where to start. They don't know what to write. Or it might be they don't want to write. You could type if that felt better. You could, again, voice note. But what I also recommend is if you're not I will say that listening to some beautiful podcasts, having songs that have really powerful, supportive words, those are things that are going to help you to lift your self-worth. However, they're not necessarily going to help you to get you to know you better. So that's what the journaling is about. It's like, how do I get to know myself better? And maybe you don't journal, maybe you draw, maybe you mind map. It doesn't have to be neat. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to make sense. It's just like really asking yourself. So if journaling doesn't work, just sitting in deep contemplation and really listening to yourself. And so then when you're listening, you might like jot down words, Because again, it's a way of recording and capturing yourself. So I love that question. Thank you so much for asking. I really do. Or simply, it might just be find yourself some questions that you can ask yourself. And I'll share some in the email that you get after this. Yeah. Thank you for the question. I love it. So I'm going to move on here to remembering what I was saying about our worth actually being our birthright. We were born worthy. It has always been within you. It's just the things that have happened to us in life and the concepts of the brain have us thinking that it's external, and it ain't. So it's a big piece about finding your worth is noticing what's already here. Because worthiness is in the now. It's not in the past. It's not in the future. It's right here. So we often think worthiness is a place we'll arrive at. So, I'll get there when this, or I'll get there when this. Do you know that I'll get there when this? Actually, all that does, and that's why I'm using my arm, all that does is put this worthy, out there away from you. It keeps you away from it. But again, that's also a reminder. It's like that's saying that this external factor has to happen in order for me to be worthy, and that ain't true. So it's a place that we believe it's a place we'll arrive at after we've done more, healed more, succeeded more. But self-worth isn't something that you earn. And I know I've said this, but I want to repeat it because there's a part of you subconsciously that won't quite be listening to me yet. It's something that you remember. And remembering only happens in this present moment. So right here, right now, before you fix anything, before you achieve anything, before you become anything else, you are already whole, already worthy. Just letting that land for a minute. You're already whole. You're already worthy. So if you're wondering about if you don't want to be journaling, can you just be saying things like this? I'm already worthy. I'm already whole. And then listen to what comes up or feel into your body what's going on. And then maybe you'll need some movement or some breath work or something you might need to release. And that's beautiful too. There's lots of practices that can support you with that. This is a really important thing for me to share. And this is why, honestly, this is the piece, this is why I'm doing this work. Because when we really understand that what we're thinking and how we're treating ourselves and what we have been led to believe that isn't true, when we understand that that is something that we have decided, it isn't something, and it is something that we can change, then we realize, remember to have loving kindness right now, we realize that we're creating our own suffering. But remember that this is fuel for change. So don't hear that and go, oh, poor me, victim. And I'm being honest here. I want you to hear that and go, I can change that. Like I get to really interrupt this old pattern that a lot of people are unaware of, and I get to move it. And it might feel sticky, and it absolutely will, to be fair, at some points. And you are worth it because that worth is already in you. You just got to find it. It's like you're breaking off the shell that wasn't chosen. So much of our suffering around self-worth comes from living in the past, what we regret or carry shame around, or the future, what we're still trying to become. But your worth doesn't live in either of those places. It lives in the now. And in the now, in this now, you can place a hand on the heart. You can take one deep breath. You can choose a kind thought. You can soften your shoulders and return to yourself. Those are things you can do to remember that the worthiness is in the now. It's not something that you find out there. It's not something that I'm going to give you or nobody else. It's something you feel by coming back in and back to now. And on the flip side of that, we have to be cautious around who we surround ourselves by when we are feeling less than. So when I say it's not something that you find out there, that's true. However, if we're aware that we perhaps have low self-esteem or low self-worth, we have to be mindful of the people around us, then if they're inhibiting that, if they're enabling that, if they're actually saying things that make us feel less than. Now, to elaborate on that, and this is a coaching brain, nobody makes us feel that way. However, if you're already feeling less than, then what we're doing is when we hear things like that, we're using that as evidence for what we believe is true. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It is our choice to change. And you don't have to if you don't want to. You really don't have to. However, I know for myself, and I'm just speaking for myself right now, that I lived for many years with such a severe lack of self-worth that I didn't believe I belonged anywhere. And I lived in my head in constant comparison, judgment, what could go wrong, why I shouldn't do this, why I wouldn't be worthy to be there. Basically all the reasons why not. But then I kept myself hidden away. I was like, it's just better to be in solitude. It's just better to be by myself, because then nobody can hurt me. But it was me that was hurting me. And living in that is not a fun place to be. So we can see that as a comfort zone, but there's no comfort in that. We're just sitting there wishing things were different, or berating ourselves for the things we're not doing while wishing we were doing them. And that's hard, man. I know. So it's not something that's out there. It's something that's in here, and it's right there. It's right there in the choices you get to make. So actually here, I want to ask us to take a moment. I'm going to take a short pause. And once again, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. You're safe here. Right, you with closed eyes to become aware of where you are. Then I want to ask yourself, what if there was nothing to fix in this moment? What if you could just be worthy and that was enough? What would it be like? And then if you've noticed your mind's gone off track, that's okay. Come back to your breath. Just notice how you're breathing. And taking a nice, big, buoyant breath in. Another big, buoyant breath in. Feeling the body that you're in. This beautiful vessel that's been with you your whole life. This body, this whole being, because you're more than the body, you're more than your mind, you're in this whole energy field that is you. I'm going to ask you this other question. If you could feel your worth in your bones right now, how would you stand, speak, or show up differently? So I want you to imagine, if you could feel your worth in your bones right now, how would you stand, speak, or show up differently? And this is that awareness piece, right? This is this listening to self. Notice when the threads go off to the what coulda, what shoulda, what coulda, doubt, fear. and come back to what was the answer. Because no one's asking you to change right now. You're just in imagination. You're in contemplation. And there may be some resistance, and that's okay. And this is your fuel. This is your information for transformation when you're ready. Nobody's forcing you to do it. But what you get to do for a while is just contemplate. What would that be like? One of my favorite questions, because we're wired for that self-criticism, right? We're wired for what could go wrong. So my favorite question here is, what could go right? If you gave it a go, if you were courageous and brave, if you started being worthy, not feeling as though you needed to be doing to be worthy, what could be different? And that's why I've left this slide up, because it is a work in progress. And you do have to trust in your capacity. But what's happening is when we are in a place of measuring, comparing, judging, berating, what shoulda, coulda, woulda, fear, doubt, we forget to trust in our capacity. We forget that simply whatever comes along, I'll figure it out. And if I don't, I'm going to learn a lot. That's epic. So if your eyes are still closed, you can come back to this space. Allow yourself to dream, to feel the worthy within your bones. I did see the question pop up. I'm going to speak to that a little bit, in a bit. Remembering, choose worthy. You choose it. Remember worthy. There's a worthy within you that's always been there. And feel it. So when you have those little moments, like I asked you before, when you feel your worth in your bones, the more you do that, that's a practice, the more it'll become an innate part of you. And you deserve that. We all do. There's not one person on this planet that deserves any more or any less than you do. We are all worthy and we are all deserving. And it's such a special thing to recognize and remember. Ooh, not there yet. Okay. So I'm going to speak to that question. How long would you say it's taken you to get from being in that place to how you are now doing amazing things like this? Ooh, that is a beautiful question. There's two answers to that. I think that it's going to depend on what layers need to be removed, what onion layers need to be peeled away. It's also going to depend on how much you choose to practice. It's going to depend on whether you step in and practice courage. And you're not always going to feel it. So that's why I was going to say there's two answers to that. Honestly, for me, to really, truly transform that, like into a knowing, yeah, that's a tricky one. That's a real tricky one, because I've been on such a journey. And I actually am really apprehensive to giving you a timeline. Because, again, we're measuring something that it's a way of living and it's an embodied you, right? But I will say that the length of time will be dependent on how much you're willing to put the work in, and also how much you are willing to shed. No, I love it. It's great. It's awesome. But the other thing that I wanted to say there, and that's why I was like two pieces of the question, I'm coming around, is that it is a constant practice. So I'm not always feeling as though I'm inherently worthy. There are things that happen that then I'm like, oh, way off balance. But I have the tools to call myself back. And I now hear within my head. So when things go wrong, or I hear a fear or a doubt that is really unreasonable, I now hear my self-support come in. It's like, it's okay, you got it. That's actually not true. You did this and that. You're fine. And you no kidding, you actually start to hear that loving kindness in your own head and heart. And that is so freaking motivating. And to be fair, that is the greatest reward when you really start to feel it when you start to see what you've put in coming back out. But also when you start to see how much changes in your life, who you're attracting, what's changing for you, what you're stepping into, what you're owning, what missions you're on, what adventures you have. There's just like this next level sense of self-pride and achievement, but it's an internal achievement because nobody else can feel it. But like, and so that inner success is greater than any external when you start to see and feel that. And not to mention when we do this work, it ripples out and you don't have to tell anyone about it. People just know it and they feel it. They can see it in you. And that's where I want to share this other quote from Brené Brown. Let me remember it. Yes, you either walk inside your story and own it. So that's like inside you and who you are, or you stand outside your story and you hustle for your worthiness. Gone are the times where we hustle for our worthiness. Gone are the times where we apologize for taking up space. We all get to play. We all get to create. We all get to enjoy our body and pleasure and connection and you name it. And that is the birthright of yours. So, yeah. I hope that answered your question. But the more you lean in, the more you'll get there, the sooner you'll get there. I think that, what I was speaking to before about understanding the parts of us that are holding us back. So understanding the patterns of perfectionism, of overgiving, of where we've been people pleasing or where we're appeasing, which is actually making us feel maybe not necessarily small. I did the withdrawn like small, but it might even just be making us feel inauthentic. And so not only does we feel inauthentic, but we start to lose sense of self. We start to lose that listening of who we are and what's important. And so that's where we want to come back to, that space of understanding that we're already whole and we're already worthy. And another piece with that, with breath work or with journaling or with energy work or somatic practices, even yoga and beautiful things like that, meditation as well, for sure. But is that we start to shed those regrets and those shames and those things that we are still holding on to because they will really get in the way of us feeling worthy. So there's definitely unlearning and there's shedding layers for sure. So there you go. I have really chatted it out for a good old 45 minutes. And I do really hope that this has sparked something within you. I hope it's been supportive and that you really felt while I'm sharing. And I know that I've been probing because that's what I'm here for. And I'm here for real talk and I'm here for elements of tough love because that's what I know that's what I needed. I needed to hear. I needed to be called out in some parts and to be poked in other parts and to really kind of a little bit shock to the system. And if that's happening for you, then I really just want to encourage you, again, loving kindness. But if there are emotions coming up, if there is frustration or annoyance or anger or tears or sadness, that's a good thing because feeling is healing because we are human and we're here to be feeling. We're here to be alive. So welcome those emotions and know that there is a release on the other side of that. And then come back to that loving kindness, come back to the small wins. And a small win for you is being here, is choosing to listen, is choosing to learn, is choosing to be open. and curious about what could be different if you choose to make a change, if you want that. Whoop, I'm going a bit far. So if this is something that really speaks to you, questions. If you have any more questions, please shoot them in the chat. I'm going to stick around for a little bit. If this speaks to you and you want to do the work, but you don't know how, I do have a program that and I'm running it for the second time. It's an online 3-week course, and it is all around finding your worthy and the tools and the concepts that support you for that. So I'm going to share a little bit more about that from now on. So if you're not interested in that, you can just duck away. It's all good. But I really would encourage you to, I'm just going to spend about a couple minutes and just share sort of about this program and how it works. And then if you have any questions, we can connect and chat about that. And again, if you're not interested, I really thank you so much for stepping in, because I think that the world will be a better place when we all find our worth. And by find it, I mean remember. By find it, I mean own ourselves and ourselves and our lives in a way that is truly authentic and honest and loving to who we are and what we're here for. And we figure all that out by owning our worth, for sure. So the program. So I've got this is a copy of the first edition, but we're actually now on second edition. I 2 weeks ago finished the last round, and it was such a beautiful journey. And the beautiful wahinis, there were actually all women for this one. That is not just women though, but they had some really profound change, and they're just feeling really different within themselves coming out of it. So that's really special. This 3-week program is actually, so it's 3 weeks, but 4 live calls. So we start with a live call, we end with a live call, and those are on Monday at 7:00. And as well as that, is you get a whole membership with activities for that week, or somatic practices, movement practices, meditations, audios, mantras, quotes, and that's all based on the week's topic for that call. And we speak to some of the things actually that I spoke to in this webinar, to be fair. So we speak to acceptance, confidence, courage, awareness, gratitude, and there's one more. It's coming. It'll come to me in my brain. Or maybe I said them all. Yeah. Release. I forgot the first one. The release. So we speak to all these different pieces that become the whole that determine how you feel within you. So there's just a little image about what's involved, like the different options for the course. So the whole course is 111. So that's the 3 weeks, the 4 calls, all of the content, and you get to keep that membership with the practices, the audios, the tools. So there's written tools, there's vocal tools, there's movement tools, and of course there's payment options for either. So that's just something I wanted to drop in, because if that speaks to you, I am here for it. I'm here for the work. The other option there is if you want to have a private call, and that might be because you can really feel some stuff that you want to work on one-on-one, and we can do that within a neuro-linguistic programming through the coaching tools that help us to really shed those layers cognitively and understand the blocks that have come in through what we believe and where we may have been hurt, or there may be some trauma that's still kind of it's clinging in our being. So I just wanted to share that with you. That starts on Monday the 23rd. So it's not actually that far. It's not this Monday coming, but the one after. But there'll be a little bit of info in your, actually, let's drop this. So either the website's there if you want to check it out. So it's just jaeomnet.com/worthy. But I'm going to come out of this because you've been looking at my tiny face for a wee bit. How do I stop it? I'll go back over here. There we go. There we are. So I just really want to say thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for stepping into what I believe is a really important piece for us to find our contentment and peace, inner peace. And I do believe that there is a lot of suffering that we are going through that isn't necessary. So if we can alleviate those pieces and parts as much as we can, we'll have a bit of time. We'll have a bit of time at this life, for sure. So I'm going to stop recording, but if you want to stick around, if you've got questions and things like that, I would love to chat. Or, if you book this call, you'll know how to get hold of me. So I will connect with you soon. Oh yeah, Becca, let's have a chat about that. Yep, let's have a chat about that. So lots of love. I'm here if you need it. And I hope that you have a beautiful night. Actually, what I'll leave you with, if you're still here with me, is because we're in the full moon of Sagittarius, and the full moon is about illuminating shadows and bringing up maybe things that we want to change. And if you are wanting to, a really simple and easy practice, and yep, it is journaling. But what I would recommend, and I did this last night, I do it every full moon, is to write down and finish the answers of I release or I forgive. So can you complete those sentences? I release, I forgive, and write as much as you can, and then burn it. Because there may be things that have come up for you, insecurities or worries or fears, as I've been speaking, maybe even judgments. Can you release those? And understanding it's a little bit like Harry Potter, and we want to pull them out, because if they're on here and on repeat, they're lowering our vibration. So if we can get those out, I release, I forgive, and forgiveness is often about ourselves, or it's a gift we give ourselves. And forgiveness doesn't mean that we have to change how we behave around someone. It just means that we are removing the impact of that experience, and it's really, truly supportive. So I'm going to leave you with that little practice. And I have a little image that I can send to you that's got the I forgive and I release. You can keep that if you like. And I invite you to burn, bury, and flush. So if that speaks to you, you can send me a message on social media and just say, can I have that image? And I'll share that for you. So there's a little added bonus. Right, I've done enough talking now. And yes, Becca, let's chat. So much love to you, and I will see you soon. Ciao.